I think we have enough on, and it's 5 minutes after, so I'm going to just officially welcome everybody to this May edition of the Fireside Chat. We thought when we talked about having Peter Lane from ReVive, ReVive Center is one of our 6 partners in the 50 Days of Easter. And just so everybody knows what a close tie the Good Samaritan, this Good Samaritan Committee has with the women of St. Chrysostom's, 5 of the people on the Good Samaritan Committee are also board members of WASC. So, so the women's organization is really vested in helping the Good Samaritans get the word out about our partnerships and about ability for us as individuals, not just as a church, but as individuals, to help some of our partners. And just to let you know, with the 50 Days of Easter, we've had every week, we've had one of those 6 partners that we're raising awareness for and making gifts available for during the 50 Days of Easter. We've had one that's been featured every week as well during this 50-day period. Sunday is the official end of the Eastertide season, but I'm sure that if anybody still wants to become involved in that effort, a lot of stuff is coming in through Amazon and whatnot, so it becomes painless to do it. You don't even have to go pick it up. You can just have it sent over to church. But we're going to be closing that up next week and then beginning to distribute things. So, but right now, the important part is that we've got Wes here to talk with Peter, and Wes and Peter have been friends for many years, and we thought, what would be more fun than to have Wes be able to play the host for tonight and lead Peter through a trip down memory lane, and also give him an opportunity to talk about the wonderful ReVive Center that he's executive director for. So take it away, Wes.
Well, Liz, thank you. It's a privilege to be with you tonight, with everyone tonight, and just thank you for joining on. It's so good to see your shining faces. And Liz, thank you for the introduction and the invitation. And it's a privilege to be with my friend Peter, who is doing some really wonderful work that's quite remarkable, actually. And so I'm Wes Smedley. I get to have the great privilege of serving as the rector of St. Chrysostom's, and Peter Lane is the executive director of ReVive Center for Housing and Healing. Previously, Peter was the rector of St. Paul and the Redeemer Episcopal Church in Hyde Park, here in the city of Chicago. Peter also taught high school and coached baseball in Philadelphia at the Nueva Esperanza Academy. Again, by way of introduction, Peter holds a Master of Divinity from Princeton Theological Seminary and an MBA from the University of Chicago. And as he does his work with his broad background of interest and expertise, Peter's committed to the idea that vibrant local institutions are instrumental to flourishing individual lives. And I hope he'll say a little more about that in our time together. So just welcome Peter Lane. Peter, thank you so much for being here tonight, for being with my sisters and brothers here at St. Chrysostom's Church. We are honored to be with you and to share some conversation. So welcome.
Thank you.
You know, Peter, I'm curious if you'd be willing to just give a quick, I want to connect most about the Christmas baskets and sort of have that be our point of entry for some conversation, because it's something that the St. Chrysostom's community has just done almost not effortlessly, but it has appeared to me as the rector effortless from so many who have just made it their quiet, loving gift of generosity during the Christmas season to go above and beyond and create this wonderful package of food and just kind of life stuff that you need. And sometimes we toot our horn, and sometimes it's much more quiet, but either way, it's almost always over 100 huge boxes of goodies. So I want to talk about that. But before we dive into that, would you be willing just to say a word about how would you describe ReVive? What's your description of ReVive's mission? Just to start, for example.
Wes, great to be with you. Great to be with everybody. And thank you, Liz, for inviting me. Thanks to the Women of St. Chris. You know, I looked it up. Our database goes back, our giving database goes back to 1993. The Women of St. Chris were one of the groups that gave to ReVive back in 1993. So, and there's, you know, many gifts recorded since then. So thank you so much to this group for supporting the organization for so long. Wes, ReVive works to prevent homelessness and restore hope. We work with people who are in shelters, who are couch surfing, who are living on the streets, and we move them into permanent housing. We don't provide the emergency shelter. We provide one step beyond that. We provide permanent supportive housing. So safe, clean apartments that are rented in the name of the person, and then all of the supportive services that wrap around that person to help them regain independence. So when people come to us, they're coming from a shelter often. Hopefully when they leave us, they're moving into less restrictive housing. Maybe I'll give an example. A woman named Ingra, who has been a very grateful recipient of the Christmas baskets. Possibly one of you have bought her and her 3 children Christmas baskets. She ended up homeless after struggling with drug addiction and was in a shelter. And she moved into the Cressy House at ReVive about 7 or 8 years ago. And in addition to getting the Christmas basket program, she worked to get her life back together. And our case managers do things like enroll her children in school, work with the school counselors to make sure that's happening, connect her with addiction services, job training, trying to help her regain independence. And then last week, she moved out of ReVive into Chicago Housing Authority housing. She has 2 jobs, one as a security guard and one as a home health aide. And she is sober, and now she will move into a brand new CHA 3-bedroom unit. That's a success story from ReVive. It always doesn't happen that way, but that's the goal. Help people move from shelter or street homelessness to independent living.
Where do you get, Peter, the people from that are coming in? Because I know we talked about how your census is always the same, and you said according to like how much square footage or bedrooms or whatever, that the city has a formula and they determine how many people you can take. So you will always have X number of people because they fill your unit up, each individual unit up with the maximum number of people that can be in it. So how do you get to your families? How do you find them? How do they find you?
The city of Chicago has a kind of common application for permanent supportive housing that all of the many organizations that provide permanent supportive housing all work from. So it's a little bit like applying to college. You fill out the common application. If someone is looking for this type of housing, they fill out a common application and are put on a list. And when a unit opens up, we go from that list. So we don't select the people. Who's ever next on the list, you know, with the right size household, gets the opportunity. They're not forced, but the opportunity to move into ReVive.
Peter, what's the average sort of lifetime of staying at Cressy House? I mean, you mentioned this case. It sounded like she was there for 7 years. Is that normal?
7 years.
I don't know the average exactly, but long stays are not uncommon. This is part of the HUD funding. Federal funding means that this is permanent housing. If they wanted to, they could stay forever, according to the rules. One of the things I'm working on is trying to increase the throughput, the turnover at ReVive.
Yeah.
That's a goal. and so of mine to use the resources. And so we're really working on finding ways of moving people basically into CHA housing. Our housing requires people to pay 30% of their income in rent. Some people's income is zero, so 30% is zero, but other people have income. Well, CHA housing also requires you to pay 30% of your income in rent. So if we can, once people are stabilized, have jobs, are in recovery, if we can move them into CHA or other housing, that's one of our goals.
Hey, Peter, you mentioned that the lady that you had just found the permanent housing, that unit had 3 bedrooms. So how many were in her family that then occupy that 3-bedroom unit?
Herself and 3 children.
Oh.
Wow.
Peter, that's helpful. Would you be willing to dive into a little bit to the Christmas Baskets ministry and what kind of, I know that you are embracing it and tweaking it in some interesting ways, or maybe just going back to its founding kind of principles, but I'm just wondering, what can you tell us about the Christmas Baskets ministry now and moving forward?
This is the 100th year of the Christmas Basket program. You know, ReVive has been on the near west side of Chicago since 1915. So not long after its founding, it started out with actual baskets. For many years has been a way to both provide tangible goods to people who are housing insecure, people who have to choose how they spend their money, rent, medicine, etc., and also provides people with what they want. So often people that are at the very bottom of the income spectrum can't choose what they want. It's all used, it's all what they can find. And so the Christmas Basket program has for years connected generous people like yourselves, people who want to provide a generous, bountiful Christmas to their family. And yeah, we're gonna keep doing it. People love it on both sides.
Peter, when I talked to you at one point in time, I think you told me that one of the ways that St. Chris could help, in addition to continuing to be providing Christmas baskets, is that you do intake, and that there might be some work to talk to the families that want to be part of the program and help collect the information that later goes on to the families that will be supporting the gifts for Christmas. Is that still something that you're needing people for?
For 6 Saturdays, starting on June 5th, we've invited over that time about 1,000 households. These are people that are seeking gifts to come and register. Those of you who have done it before know you get a printout with the people's names and what they're looking for and what they're hoping for. And so, yeah, if you'd like to come and help register people for the Christmas Basket program, I hope you'll send me an email. Maybe Wes, you throw my email in the chat while I'm talking,
For sure.
and I'll arrange for that. One great thing about that is you get to meet some of the families and put a face to some of the generosity.
Well, we'll ask Shelley to put that opportunity into our e-blasts for the next couple of weeks and see if we can't round a few people up for you.
Terrific.
Yeah, I'm just curious, Peter, to that extent, how do you communicate? As I understand it, ReVive is the most holistically embraced by the Episcopal congregations in the Diocese of Chicago. It's something like the most amount of congregations are connected with ReVive. How do you get the word out about things like this, like the 6 Sundays in June, or Saturdays, excuse me?
There's about 35 parishes in the diocese that participate in the Christmas Basket program. We communicate mostly with the Christmas Basket coordinators at each of the parishes. If I had been prepared for this evening, I would know who it was at St. Chrysostom, but I don't, sorry to say.
Susanna Cravecox, probably.
Yeah, I think it is. Susanna Cravecox. Well, John's there. He would know.
I know Susanna has been doing it. I didn't know if she was still doing it. Susanna, I'm very happy to say, has joined the board of ReVive. So that's it's a terrific thing for ReVive. Yeah.
Wonderful.
You're lucky to have her. So maybe, Peter, if it works to have one of the folks just send us a little description of that. I mean, that kind of the June, being able to meet the families and help them register, just to make that connection can be so meaningful to sort of know where it's going. And I had the great opportunity of going to spend some time with Peter and his son, and I took my middle daughter Naomi, and we helped register folks, or well, not register folks, help people pick up their baskets, and during the Christmas season this past year. And just it's you'll hear even just one story is enough to fill you up in ways that you could sort of never previously imagine.
Speaking of the devil, Susanna Craigcock just came out, so not here. Our ears must have been burning, Susanna, because we were talking about your job as the coordinator between St. Chris and ReVive and the Christmas baskets for a number of years. So,
well, very kind of you, and I'm delighted to be here. And apologies for being late, but it really has been one of the more rewarding things that I do with St. Chris, and it's something that I think brings our community together really strongly. And I find that it's something that I am often, really grateful for the chance to, and it helps me reflect on, how good our life is and the way that we can help others. So I think it's something that's really wonderful, and I'm delighted to be here, and apologies again for being late. So everybody.
Hi there.
Hi, Susanna.
It is Christmas to me. That means Christmas. And I wonder if you're still supported by the Second Chance Thrift Shop?
The Second Chance Thrift Shop, which ReVive ran for many years, was closed about 2.5 years ago.
Been away longer than that, so I didn't know that.
Yeah.
It helped us a lot.
but how and Wes alluded to some changes with the Christmas basket program. Peter, what are those changes that are coming up, or are you not ready to?
Oh, I meant the inviting people to help with the registration.
Oh, okay.
But if there are other tweaks, I'm curious to know what those are. But maybe that.
Generally speaking, my experience with the Christmas basket program is the people that receive the gifts love it, and I've heard from a lot of people that give the gifts that they also love it. One of the things we'll think of that I want that be thought about over the next few years is who can be a recipient of the Christmas baskets. The vast majority of people who experience homelessness in Chicago are single or single men, and they're not eligible for the Christmas baskets. Wonder if over time, we might consider adding that group. That's not, we would obviously it would be add, not replace, because so many people, including me, love to buy for families. My young son and I love to get a family with the same age kid and go shopping, and that's one of the great things. But might consider about who we think is, deserves to get these Christmas baskets, and I'd argue it should be the.
Why are the single men not? Why was that group eliminated from the list? Just because you thought the families had a greater need? Is that why?
That precedes me. I think that's been the way it was. If I were to guess, I would guess that there was a notion of kind of the deserving poor, that children and the elderly, are in some ways more of the deserving poor. And which was not an uncommon view, and still, and so it's pushing a back on that a little bit. Kind of every single person has inherent dignity. John,
I would suspect that from St. Leonard's that the homeless men they have no place to keep anything. If you're living under Highway Expressway, you don't have room in your shopping cart. And if you're in a homeless shelter, you can't preserve whatever you get. I would think that's probably one of the things that the homeless single men and women just have no place to keep anything. They carry everything with them.
I think you're certainly right about that, John. There's also quite a few who had experienced homelessness who now do live in supportive housing situations like at ReVive, like at the Royalton Hotel where we provide services. And that group
Yeah,
of people would have space to
like the
hold
apartment
things.
at
Yeah.
St. Leonard's too.
Yeah, the St. Leonard's is another example. Yeah.
You know, there are people, Peter, that I have felt called to think about, and those are the people that have maybe been on the streets for a long time and during COVID, because different types of supportive housing and complete, you know, and complete housing for them has been a possibility. So some of those people, what is going to stop them from going back out into the streets when this safety net falls out? And you know, we've got to think about what we can do for them. And maybe, you know, this is something, even when it comes to Christmas baskets, how do you get things to some of these individuals? Maybe to work through some of the feeding ministry programs or something. And you could maybe be helpful in showing us how better to serve with the Christmas basket idea, those single people that have not been part of a program like this in the past. I mean, I think there's a lot of synergies that can start occurring, and this would be a good example of, you know, something that could be worked on.
Yeah.
What's it been like this last year, Peter, with COVID and the challenges of being in person for ReVive, and how have you guys managed that and navigated those waters, and are there additional ways that churches like St. Chrysostom's or congregational organizations like ours can I don't know, can be present or partner with you through these changes? I guess my first question is around COVID and how you guys have adapted to that, if you've needed to.
Yeah, well, we've certainly adapted. Like so many of the staff went remote at the beginning. We do run residential facilities, so that means a lot of the staff was in person the entire time. If you're a custodian or you work the front desk or other stuff like that. Also, our supportive services is social workers, occupational therapists, case managers. A lot of that work is in-person work. You know, if you're recently off the streets, it's unlikely that you're very good at like keeping a schedule, or you might not even have a phone, and probably not a computer. So even our case managers and social workers have been on site quite a bit through the whole thing. Unfortunately, one resident did die of COVID. Like so many, someone with considerable, other vulnerabilities, which we were very sad about. It was very difficult to enforce mask rules among our population, but we tried our best. And I should say that there's ways in which the pandemic provided amazing opportunities for ReVive. ReVive went through a kind of financial crisis about 2 years ago. And the pandemic allowed us kind of space to recover from that. And so while it was difficult in many ways, it also kind of brought breathing room, which we're very grateful. And it even brought money, PPP loan, and other stuff. So the pandemic was a mixed blessing for us, difficult and good. Yeah.
During this time, you've been one of the frontline workers, right? Who just went into work and continued working, is that right?
I was totally remote for the first few weeks, like everybody else, but I've been going to the office mostly since then. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Peter gave me a tour, you guys, and it was definitely in the midst of COVID, and he gave me a wonderful tour of the residences. And he was, one of the interesting things is to see the CEO fix a toilet paper rung that's missing, and to know how to fix a faucet that's leaking, and a couple other things. So that was kind of cool to see. I'm curious, Peter, given what you shared about this past year, I guess one of the questions I have is, what are the trends that you see right now in Chicago around the issues of homelessness and of support services, the need for support services? What are the trends that that you see that you could share with us to be aware of and mindful of?
Well, those of you who have thought about real estate recently know that housing is getting more expensive. More expensive housing means more people experiencing homelessness, right? If rent gets more expensive, more people will experience homelessness. So, there needs to be support for rent payments. A second thing I would say is to give a plug for Housing First, permanent supportive housing. People can move into ReVive, no questions asked. You don't have to have a job. You don't have to be sober, nothing, right? You can move in. And then the supports, the social workers, the case managers, the occupational therapists help you meet the goals that you establish. And that is a very successful way of working with the homeless, people who have experienced homelessness. Because it's very hard to work on recovery if you're living in a shelter or on the streets or moving from one couch to another. Super hard to get a job in that situation. The government does have benefits for a lot of people, but it's complicated. Some of you probably finished filling out your taxes. It's not so easy to fill out these forms, especially if you suffer from mental illness or addiction. And places like ReVive have case managers that know how to do that for people. And so it's twofold. One, there has to be housing that is affordable, that's very inexpensive. And then there has to be the support to help people stay in it. Because if there's just housing, people will fall away if they don't have kind of case management support.
That's really helpful. Yeah. Well, Peter, let's see, you've been the chief executive officer for 14 months or 15 months? How long? 18 months? How long has it been?
About, yeah.
And, so I'm curious, what's, just looking forward in the next, just foreseeable future, let's call it 1 to 3 years, what do you see some of the challenges and opportunities ahead? And again, just keeping in mind that of ways for congregations like ours to partner with you.
Well, the good news is ReVive is back on strong financial footing and ready to grow, ready to engage with congregations. And so I'll answer the second part first, the engagement. One, these Christmas basket opportunities, the summer Saturdays, or we'll also advertise, there's 2 weeks in a row around Christmas where we hand out the gifts. I think many of you would enjoy coming over for a couple hours, 3 hours, and either one of those times. It's quite rewarding. And another opportunity is we have something what we call the Engagement Center. We try to create as low a barrier to services as possible. All of the services we provide are voluntary. No one's required to do any of them. It's a little bit like going to church. No one's required to. See, it has to be compelling. And so we're trying to have compelling programming. So for example, one woman, a Northwestern medical student who plays the violin, is providing music classes in the center once a month. And so if any of you or other people you know have something that you love that you'd like to share with a population like ours, we can work together to find ways of, maybe one of your Bible studies during Lent could meet at ReVive and could welcome any of the guests who wanted, any of our residents who wanted to join you, or maybe somebody here wants to read books with the clients or something. Basically, one fact is when people move off of the streets or in shelters into permanent housing, loneliness is an affliction, because living in shelters or on the streets is a very active life. All of a sudden you get your own apartment and it can be very lonely. Loneliness leads to additional, drug use often goes up, and so we're trying to provide compelling communities so that people don't get lonely and so that they can engage in recovery, in skill acquisition, So I'm open to, any of those kinds of ideas. In 1 to 3 years, well, finally, we need more housing. The solution to homelessness is homes. So I don't know if that's 1 to 3 years, or maybe 3 to 5 years. Let's get some more permanent supportive housing.
Hey, Peter, how many families can you accommodate now?
Well, we own 28 units,
Yeah.
but we provide services to people that we have a contract with the Illinois Department of Human Services, and we provide services to maybe about 150 additional households, many of whom are, the household is made up of one person. Yeah.
These are like outpatients.
People that live in the Royalton single room occupancy, people that live in other SROs, and so in this case, the landlord provides the housing, we provide the supportive services.
Gotcha.
So we don't necessarily have to own the property in order to provide the support.
Gotcha.
Peter, some time back, there was tutoring done at ReVive. It was then Cressy House. Is that still part of families with children there?
Well, first of all, it's still very much Cressy House. That's the building that I work in. And there's no current tutoring. One thing about COVID is it just wreaked havoc with all the volunteer programs that were in person. We have provided
before that.
I don't know what happened 2 years ago. I mean, honestly, the organization went through a rough patch, and it's coming back. So I wouldn't be surprised if it had fallen apart.
Thank you.
We have provided space for our children to do their remote school every day downstairs with supported by interns and stuff. So, but yeah, something like that would be a great thing to bring back. Yeah.
So might that tutoring program be reinitiated in the fall, perhaps when school begins again?
Very well could be, yes.
Peter, I know you're a cellist. Not everyone may know that. I know you're a cellist. How's the cello going, and how's your band?
And Wes, band. I'm an amateur cellist. I play in a trio, which is a great joy. We shelved it for one of our trio members was in Germany, and we hadn't played for almost 2 years, but on Sunday we played again. And great to play piano trio, Mozart and Beethoven piano trios again. So it's a great joy to play music. Yeah, but we don't call it a band.
Have you done? Because I was thinking my husband belonged to a band, and they actually did benefits, and that's the only thing really they ever did. They never had paid gigs. It was a bunch of doctors and lawyers from a band called Malpractice came together with a band of parents, fathers from the school that our daughter was going to, and they called themselves Rockwurst because Bratwurst was big in Sheboygan, and they only played for benefits. So you should look into that, Peter. Maybe you can raise a little money for ReVive by
everybody.
doing a gig.
We'll subscribe to that. Have our cocktails ready. Go,
Yeah.
Peter, go.
Don't trust his understated Midwestern approach. He's really good, and so is their band.
What fun.
Need a name though.
Let's get on that.
I did have, this is like going to another topic, but back when we're talking about the men that don't get the Christmas baskets, I know on the 50 Days of Easter Giving for Bishop Anderson's house, we're doing these backpacks, and that might be fun to think about, doing a backpack for the men and thinking what could go in them. And they do it for burn victims that don't have anything, and they just hand them a backpack with food. Anyway, it's a thought for Christmas. It might be a lot easier than a basket, really.
That's a great idea, and it could be distributed at meal programs like the one that we have. We could talk to some of our guests and say, that this is something that we're looking to do for those who maybe aren't going to get gifts at all, that have fallen through the crack, and they could be distributed through meal programs to people.
Good idea.
Oh, that's a wonderful idea, Janet. See, got another project, right?
Good idea, Janet. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Janet. Peter, what questions do you have for us, for me and Liz, or for the group here? What crosses your mind? We can talk about how we met up in Philadelphia if there's time, but hopefully there won't be time. But what questions do you have for us or for this group?
Well, as you know, as ReVive, you know, hopefully continues to thrive, we need to. One of my goals is to think about how we serve both the clients, but also the people, the volunteers, and the donors. And so, you know, I am interested in what kind of volunteer opportunities are, you know, most desired. You know. And are practical, that actually will, you know, actually can be done. And I know it takes a lot of heartfulness to do that.
You just got one idea of backpacks for Christmas time for the gents who aren't yet included.
I'm taking notes. I got it written down.
Yeah, that's good.
Hey, Peter, I have a question. Do you have any special needs for the kids that are in your place? Or are there any special programs for them that are involved in ReVive? And what are the typical ages?
The ages are all over the map because whoever moves in, you know, however old their kids are. I think right now the ages are like 5 to 17 or something like that. And their special needs, they're quite individual, you know, because each one of them, you know, is into something different. So it's hard to say one thing, but you know, they have very little. So, you know, that the Christmas baskets is a great joy for them. And, you know, maybe providing something on, you know, Christmas in July, maybe for next year or something. Because one of the great things about the Christmas basket program is they actually get to ask for what they want. And that's really wonderful. So.
Or birthdays.
That's another good idea. Yeah.
Peter,
Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
the expectations that that are placed on people who go into your residence, is that something that's kind of that the city sets up what those expectations are, or do you have goals yourself and, you know, what people have to do? Because I would imagine that you know, you certainly you're not a 3 strikes and you're out kind of place, I'm sure, but like you said, there are some things that people can get involved in that can have an impact on all of those who live around them as well, and that you can't have the ship sinking for someone who can't follow the rules. So how do you handle those kinds of things, and are your rules different than what they may get, you know, what HUD may have, and how do you deal with those kinds of issues?
HUD is a major funder of ReVive, and so we follow HUD's rules.
Okay.
So HUD, for about the last 20 years or so, since the George W. Bush administration, HUD has been a proponent of housing first. Housing first means you get housing before sobriety, before a job, and that there are no conditions. I shouldn't say no conditions on you staying, because you do have to pay your rent, and you obviously can't be violent or something. And so those are HUD rules.
Okay.
We are trying to create expectations, a culture of you know, of people moving towards their goals, so that we can, you know, get, hopefully next time you ask me how long people stay on average, I hope the number will go down. Those are not HUD rules, and we couldn't make them rules. We can have to create a culture and kind of expectations. Our folks will gain the skills they need for independence.
Peter, someone asked how we met in 2003, I think it was. Do you remember how we met? I'm trying to remember. It was a long time. It was 20 years ago, I think. 19 years ago.
My wife Erin and I moved to Philadelphia after graduate school. She had graduated from UPenn, and we were looking for a church. And we showed up at a church, and there was a super generous, big, burly priest who, you know, made sure that we felt super welcome at Christ Church, Philadelphia. And, you know, we had our skepticisms about us, and we heard that whoever we are and wherever we are on the journey of faith, we are welcome as we are. And we were sold. And so that's how Wes and I met. He was my priest. I'm very grateful for that. And we became friends. And when I was at St. Paul and the Redeemer, the Lilly Endowment, you could apply for a vocational friendship grant, because one real challenge for clergy people is loneliness, not dissimilar to the those who experience homelessness. So the Lilly Endowment would provide grants for people to make friends. And I applied for one of these grants so that I could go.
What was in that application, Peter Lane?
Well, I wrote the application, and, you know, using all the skills I'd garnered, I put that we would come together, play squash, and drink beer. Okay. And they gave us the money, and it was great.
And we followed through on what we promised,
Of
as
course.
I recall.
That's great.
I have
yeah,
a
please, Lindsay.
for Peter. I was wondering, what about health care for the people in the ReVive Center program, and particularly during this time of COVID, but in general, how is health care covered for them?
Medicaid, by and large. The work is that most of the people, when they come to us, are not enrolled, right? Eligible and enrolled are two very different things. And actually a third different thing is participating. So you can be enrolled, but to actually go to the doctor, to find a doctor, a primary care doctor, to go, one of the things our case managers do is they schedule appointments and then accompany them for the first couple times. If you haven't been to the doctor in 10 years, it can be very intimidating. So the government will largely pay, but just because it's paid for doesn't mean it's easy to get there.
Right.
Thanks.
You know, that leads me to wonder, you always hear about homeless people having trouble applying because they don't have any IDs. Do you guys help them obtain IDs for, you know, driver's license, whatever the case may be?
All of that. That's what our case managers do. When they come, they might not have any of that. And, you know, you get them an ID, you get them a bus pass, you get them enrolled in either SSDI or SSI, depending on whether they've worked or what their disability status is. You know, connect them with a primary care physician, connect them with a recovery center. Yeah, that's the work. That's what case managers do. And it's complex. This government hasn't made it simple.
But you with people in housing together, like is it Cressy House? Have you had a number of people that have resisted getting vaccines, and then because of the closeness in which they you know, they are, that this has become a real problem? How have you dealt with that? Because I know certainly, you know, all over the place, people have resisted getting the vaccines, and many people who have other comorbidities are still resisting, and because emotional problems maybe are you know, part of that issue too, or some type of mental affliction. Has that hampered your ability to keep your areas safe, or how have you dealt with that?
We had somebody come to ReVive to provide vaccines to all the willing staff and residents. And before that, we tried to do big education campaigns about what the vaccine was and why it was safe. We went to every single room independently in both the SRO building and the Cressy House, inviting people down, making it as low barrier as possible. And yes, there were many people who didn't take both staff and residents who did not get vaccinated. And how are we dealing with that? We continue to encourage them. We're very close to the United Center. And I would say that people are, you know, knowing people who've taken it, and resistance is going down, and then we get them an appointment at the United Center. But yeah, all kinds of wild conspiracy theories.
Wow.
Do you guys help with transportation for everybody too? Give them rides? You said bus passes, but.
Yeah, we provide both bus passes, to get to job interviews, and we also, do Uber to get to doctor's appointments and other things. And yeah, that's a major important thing is providing transportation assistance.
I'm not seeing, is anybody else raising their hand or wanting
I'm
to ask
curious
a
if we have a few more minutes. I'm curious if there are other questions you can send through the chat or just ask Peter directly or any of us.
I have a question. Is there any garden area or anything around Cressy House?
Unfortunately not. Cressy House is kind of locked between Ogden and some other, it's unfortunately not.
Within that, okay. Because I have a friend who volunteers at one of the pantries, Lakeview, and she talks about how Trader Joe's and so forth will donate flowers and plants and so forth. And my experience working in long-term care with people who were lonely was gardening and flowers and plants and so forth bring people together. So like something like a garden group or garden club or something like that. Would you see something like that being of interest to people, that they might come to something like that?
I think it would be terrific. It's hard to know what they'll come to, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to overpromise, but we have brought in lots of plants into our new engagement center, which are, which certain residents water. If you come in, you'll see that the watering is not, precisely on schedule, but that's not the point. So absolutely, those are the kinds of things that we want to build in. Yeah.
Well, interesting too is people often want the opportunity to give, not just receive. So if they're able to assemble something to take to people who aren't well, it gives them the opportunity to be, to feel good about they can contribute in some way, shape, or form.
That's a wonderful idea to have the give people an opportunity to put stuff together for other people. I think that would be very well received.
Yeah. So if they know it's a purpose, not just to keep them busy, but to give them a sense of how they can be helpful, maybe visit somebody else and provide, a little bouquet or whatever. Just a thought.
Not to mention vegetables, so if they grew some food, that's fun. Wonderful for everybody.
So Peter, as you talk about the volunteers and the vaccinations and reluctance by some, has ReVive opened up again for the volunteers to come in, or has that not yet taken place?
Well, we're opening on Monday. Everyone's going back to work full time on Monday, and we're no visitors for the residents for the last however many months. That's all changing on Monday. Yeah.
Peter, I had a couple questions that came in on a chat. Can residents have pets? That was an interesting question. I'm a pet lover, and a lot of us are. But certainly, if somebody is single and lonely, it would be nice. But what is your policy on that?
It would be very nice, but the policy is no pets.
No pets. Okay. Okay. And someone else asked, what is your dream for ReVive? And I think we discussed some of those things, but is there anything else that you haven't had an opportunity to share with us yet as far as what you'd like to see besides Santa to drop a few more housing units in your lap in the next 5 years? Anything else, Peter?
I think what we do is really important, and I think there's a huge market for it. And so it might be a boring answer to say do more of the same, but when you're doing something important and there's way more need than there is resources, my dream is to do what we're doing, but more of it, and more housing and more supportive services to gain expertise, so that we can more effectively help people regain their independence. The Housing First policy I was mentioning before that started in the Bush administration has been extremely successful in getting people housed. If you only judge it based on people staying in housing, it's been a terrific success. It hasn't been as much of a success in helping people thrive in their life. It has, it can lean towards warehousing.
Mm-hmm.
So a vision is, that's not an easy problem, but how do you help people both stay housed and thrive? Live as abundant a life as they can. And I would love it if ReVive was known for both keeping people housed so people don't fall out of housing, and they leave with the skills to live as the lives that they want to live.
I mean, that's a wonderful vision to have, Peter. It's just great. Peggy invited me a couple months ago to sit in on a discussion about housing, because we've been so actively involved with feeding ministries throughout COVID, and certainly that housing, and they stress the same thing you did. Housing is really the first thing before you can be successful. You've got to get that sense of permanence underneath someone, that gives them, I would imagine that it gives them a sense of possibilities once that part of the picture is taken care of, and they have what does it do to someone who hasn't been housed to find themselves suddenly in a house? I mean, have you talked to some of your people about that? And
well, maybe I could finish with one last story about a resident, and that's a woman named Lanita who moved in about 2 months ago. She has a 12-year-old son. They had been living in a family shelter. When they showed up at ReVive, it was the same day that I was taking some photographs for a fundraising event, trying to tell stories. And we went into their room to take some photographs, and she apologized to me. She said, "I'm sorry, I don't have much, or I don't have anything." And I looked around her room, and I was aware she really had nothing. There was no clothes, no sheets, because when she was living in the shelter, and she had nothing. And she couldn't, because if you leave during the day, it's so hard to keep stuff. And her son wasn't going to school because they didn't know where they were going. She had health problems, but didn't have a doctor. And it's been amazing to watch her and her son kind of come to life as they're starting to have the kids in school, the mom's going to a doctor. They're starting to show up at things, starting to laugh. It's a great joy to see Lanita and her son. And if you don't have a house, if you don't have someplace to sleep, if you don't know where you're going to sleep, or if you do know where you're going to sleep, but you have to leave by 7 in the morning and wander around Chicago, that's a tough position to raise a 12-year-old in.
Oh, definitely.
Sort of like Maslow's hierarchy, right? You don't have shelter, you have to work up.
Yeah.
But I think this is great because so many times, I think I've talked to you about this, Wes, some of these problems feel overwhelming, but you guys are actually concretely doing something to help with the problem of homelessness. And I think it's really, really respectful and really great thing.
It's fun for all of us to work with places that give us hope that there is a possibility that we're going to see some shifts and see some of these opportunities come to people, because it's not always hard, or it's easy to help, but to be successful at it. And I mean, you guys are making a real difference in people's lives. And I mean, if other people have some questions while they're thinking of it, I just wanted to remind everybody that ReVive is one of the Good Samaritan 6 recipients of our 50 days of Easter collection. Right now, left for ReVive are things like Depends and diapers, paper towels, laundry detergent, dish soap, toilet paper, some really basic things. But one thing Peter said to me when I called him to just touch base and see what we could put on our list And it was hard for us to put this on our little sign up genius, but I can mention it to you, and if you want to share it with other people from the parish. Peter said anything that give them just a little sense that somebody else out there is caring. He said people could use plaques for the wall that say a home is, you know, the heart of a family, or electric candles, or maybe something atomizers that give a warm scent to a room, like it's, you know, like your house can smell like apple pie or whatever, that makes people feel like they are grounded and in the home. Maybe even some inspirational books. So if anyone has some of those things that are gently used or has a source, that they would be able to provide us with any of those things that we could pass on to Peter's group when we distribute the gifts that we've collected. You know, Peter told me, if you've got any other ideas, Peter, share with us, but I just thought it would be really nice that we could spread the word in this next week while we're finishing up our 50 days of Easter, and maybe provide, how many, you have 28 separate units, like right at your place, and then you said 100 and some that you are responsible for providing services for. But even if we could come up with something for 28 households, just something that lets people know that there's someone out there that cares, maybe even a little plant or something. I don't know, Peter, what do you think?
I like all those ideas. I think the plant idea is one of the nice ideas from now. You know, give people a plant to take up to their unit. That would be something.
Okay. So if anybody has ideas like that, you know, we talked about just over this last couple minutes, a few things, and you're more than welcome to bring those in or send those to church. They don't have to be on the sign up genius list. Just make note that these are coming in for the ReVive residents, and we'd be more than happy to see if we can't bring a little bit of joy to your residents in the next couple of weeks, Peter.
Hey, John.
Do you have a policy about used clothing and used objects, and do you have a place to store it?
We don't really need or want used clothing or used furniture. Clothing is difficult because there are so many sizes.
Yeah.
And so to keep them in stock of all the correct sizes is hard. And furniture, you know, we need very specific items of furniture sometimes, but we don't have the space to kind of warehouse all of the varieties of furniture.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank St. Chrysostom, especially the women of St. Chrysostom, for this generosity to ReVive over the many years. Handing out Christmas baskets last year and getting to hear the stories of the people that were coming in made me understand just how important the program is to so many. And you really bring a lot of joy to a lot of people, and you bring tangible goods to them that they don't have to find a way to buy for themselves. So thank you so much for doing that. And St. Chrysostom, the church, has been a supporter of ReVive for decades and decades. All of the windows on the north side of the building were given by St. Chrysostom. So next time you drive down Ogden, look up at those windows proudly. Thank you for that.
Wow.
I'll just add to that, Peter, that the drive to ReVive is not far. It's about 10 minutes west, and not even barely 10 minutes. So it's not like a long drive. It's a wonderful drive, and it's a wonderful place. It's a wonderful place to visit. And you know, Liz and the women of St. Chrysostom's, thank you so much for holding this fireside chat and these fireside chats. And Peter, thank you for being part of our life, this church's life, and for doing the work you're doing, which takes a real sense of persistence and perseverance. And so we honor that and are just honored to be with you in that.
Thanks, Wes. Thanks for your friendship.
I didn't go that far. I didn't say friendship.
I want to thank everyone for coming this evening. You know, we had many people, some people that we haven't seen for any of the fireside chats before, Peter. So you drew a crowd tonight. And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. I leave feeling a lifted spirit tonight. It's wonderful to see all all the people that are working so hard to try to make this all work, especially during the whole COVID crisis. We sent meals over early in the COVID crisis while people were getting their bearings, and I certainly hope and pray that we can send you some cheer in the next couple weeks as well, Peter. And just know that you know, sometimes you have to ask. You have to let us know what we can do to help you out. And this is a wonderful, giving, warm parish, and I'm sure we'll do whatever we can to continue to support our partnership.
Thanks, Liz.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming this evening, and look forward to further fireside chats, and maybe even doing some things in person pretty soon as well, regarding WASC and the parish in total. So I wish everybody a happy evening and a happy return to some sense of normalcy soon.